In a world where the quality of information available to poorer communities is doctored, tainted and sometimes regressive, where the words fake news have come to mean other people's opinions, it is vital to rely on news platforms with journalists who have feet on the ground and can report the truth. New York Parrot, a New York-based national and global news outlet, is changing the narratives of media operations. We focus on the news that matters, like self-empowerment, entrepreneurship, finances, health, security, politics, and more. We strive to curb violence, racial and economic discrimination, and to promote peace and socio-economic development of multiculturally diverse world. As we give voice to the people, we also give your business a voice and make it heard. Get your products and services off the ground by advertising on our fast-growing platform. With so much of daily visits to New York Parrot, you can't afford to be invisible to prospective clients on the website they trust the most. Our posts reach millions of people across the New York State and around the world. Advertising on our new site will unlock an audience of thousands of potential customers on your doorstep. New York Parrot is born to prosperously speak tomorrow for the voiceless.
New York Parrot is the voice of humanity, progressive-minded, and we are changing the narratives of media. Foreign Policy Review is part of this programming, and if you enjoy this program, please subscribe to our channel. Welcome to the Foreign Policy Review. I'm Dustin Pickering. That commercial is really well done. Thanks to the team that put that together. Today we have CARLO PARCELLI and Billy Bob, our regular co-hosts, and I'm Dustin Pickering again. And we're going to discuss the socioeconomic, conditions we're facing that are really kind of, hell in a handbasket, as they say, going on across the world. This will be a hodgepodge show. We're going to kind of have a broad discussion of a lot of different topics and a lot of rants and ravings and so forth. Every one of us would probably have a few things on our mind. I would like to start, kick the button here and kick the bucket up and see what you guys think of this new issue with the Pope Francis discussing the colonialism in Canada and some of the graves that have been the unmarked graves have been discovered, the schools that they say have that indigenous kids were forced into to be indoctrinated to the white man's ways. The church wants to apologize. Now, have we seen this criteria before? Have we seen the church apologize for something in the past and then backtrack and say, wait a second, never mind? Like they do this a lot. They do this kind of, like do goody apologetics a lot of times, but ultimately they're the cash cow. We know they're frauds, and there's so many cases of, and especially in a lot of religious communities, not just the Catholic Church, of sexual abuse against young people, and this goes unheard until they hit rock bottom and they have to say something. Recently, an article in the New York Times talked about the Southern Baptist community doing this, and it's really appalling that so much corruption is within these institutions that are aligned with "quote unquote" God, or the holy people, or whatever you want to call it. And it really appalls me that that they want to go back and say, okay, yeah, we made a mistake in the past. We're repenting now. Like, yeah, that works for some people, like when some things. But to an extent, I'm like, look, this is massive, corruption, and it's not just in all the way back in the 1800s. I mean, I've heard cases in Ireland, for instance, that happened as far back as just the 1970s. I mean, that was just recent. They're still digging those people up, as far as I know. And I'm hearing a lot of other stories about the Pope, candidly admitting that, yes, there are cases where nuns are raped and forced to have abortions if they get pregnant, things of this nature. Now, why is this not being cracked down on? And what we're talking about, Pope Francis, he's a contention in and of himself because of the Argentine dirty war that happened in the 70s and throughout, where progressive priests were and nuns were, violated and their rights violated when they were trying to feed the poor and help the poor. So there's some rumors going around that he may have aided and abetted that, and there's some defenses from the church and from some of his colleagues and friends who say he did not do this. So that's a good issue. And what do you guys think of the of overall of the the church politics and being even why should the church even be so political? It's supposed to be a religious organization. And I can kind of see to a certain extent it promoting ethics. If you're a religious person, maybe you like that. But why so political? Why like organizations like Opus Dei and where they're so heavily imbued with this really extreme right wing malignancy.
Billy Bob, go ahead.
Okay. Well, there's two things to address this subject matter. I mean, the first one is, I do not uphold the truth claims of organized Christian religion. Like, I don't think the things that they say are true about, the existence of an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-loving God. And, the basic dogmas, I'm not certain that those are based in reality. But I do not oppose other people that believe that. Like, so people that are convinced that it's actually true, that the truth claims are true, they are in their rights, within their rights, and I don't say I'm not going to associate with you. So I don't oppose, religious beliefs. I don't by them myself, but when we talk about the hierarchy of the church and its structure and how it functions politically within society, I mean, it can be a good thing or it can be a bad thing. And throughout history, it's been a negative thing. I mean, the organized religions throughout feudalistic society worked with the aristocracy to maintain that system that benefited the few and was detrimental to the many. And then we see the same thing with the capitalist revolution and the aristocracy, the church, and the capitalists uniting against socialism. So there are Catholics, good Catholics that are socialists. There are good Marxist Catholics and Christians of all different denominations, and we embrace them. There's also Muslim socialists. So we got to just be clear about when we're talking about this broad topic, we got to distinguish all these things. But and at the same time, there's some good socialist countries like Nicaragua that are thoroughly Catholic, and I support them. But they are very conservative, and I'm not happy with their stance towards abortion, and their stance on different cultural issues. Same with Iran, like they're very conservative socially and culturally. And we, I want to kind of help liberalize those things, but at the same time, I don't let those things keep me from giving them support against imperialism. So it's a huge topic, but that's the basic, fundamental approach that I take.
Excellent. What is your thoughts, Carlo?
I just like to relate it to the current abortion decision by the Supreme Court.
Okay.
Here you have what I've been screaming about for years, a papist court. And many of those people on the court belong to conservative, and if you don't mind, wacky, fictitious beliefs. These are adults who believe this shit. Fuck that. And they're making decisions for other people when you're crazy, when you're a fucking lunatic. That's wrong. How did we get to this point? You make a good point, Dustin, about the neglect of the children in Ireland and the children currently talked about in Canada by the Pope. Well, that's what happens here every fucking day. Every fucking day in America, children suffer from neglect. And I'll guarantee you that those fucks on the Supreme Court don't give a rat's rectum about children. They've got this kind of fantasy world going on in their head, ironically, completely antithetical to the teachings of the New Testament, utterly antithetical, cruel to the root of things, cruel to the core. Yet these fuckers make these decisions for people like us three who are rational, who are not driven by Disney World cartoons of reality. You know,
Right.
and don't get me started on reality, because that was one of the subjects I was rooting around in for the show, and I could go on for like 50 hours with just examples, anecdotes of the unreal that I've encountered like that in this
Right.
culture at large, which has us in the situation with Ukraine, which leads me to the next. I think the next topic I'd like to address. I'd like to hear from Billy Bob, because he was talking about kibitzing with people about Ukraine just before he came on the show, and I think it's valuable that we kind of air out what I think he was trying to express. I mean, what was going on, Billy Bob?
Well, no, you have talked about the same thing before, where you're just dealing with the general public, and you're trying to talk to them about Ukraine, and they're calling you brainwashed, but they don't know the very first thing. They don't know about the Maidan. They don't know about the shutting down of media, about the outlawing of the Russian language, about the preparations for enforcing, violently enforcing Kiev sovereignty over Crimea, over the Donbass. They're just totally clueless. But yet, because you're coming with actual facts, they assume you're brainwashed because they don't hear that anywhere else. So that was the kind of thing that I was dealing with right before we went live. But I usually don't do that. I usually stay within my own little bubble and my own little circle, and people are at least marginally informed. And I rarely venture out into the greater general public like you've been subjecting yourself to.
Torture.
I want to say a couple of things. First of all, one of the places I venture to is Breitbart. And
Yeah.
what's curious about Breitbart, which is used to be Banner's operation, I guess he still has some influence, is that they're not talking about Ukraine. There's hardly mention of Ukraine. It's like off the radar for them. But I'll give you one anecdote, and then I'll pitch it to Dustin. And this has to do with my situation back in the 90s when I had a bookstore in upper Northwest Washington, D.C., where I still live in the metropolitan area. And Bethesda, Chevy Chase, very wealthy people. Christopher Hitchens came by the store. Stephanopoulos came by the store. Richard Pearl came by the store. George Will came by the store. But Bill Bloom came by the store. Lou Wolf of the Covert Action magazine. But you get that. Julian Bond, probably one of the most wonderful people I ever met, came by the store all the time. Great. There were great people and terrible people. Washington's full of them. And so I like to put things up because I was paying rent. So I put up Smedley Butler's, testimony about war as a racket. But one of the other things I put up was an article about Somalia, and it dealt with Somalia and oil. So I pasted it up on the side of the bookshelf, and this guy comes up to me and he says, "Well, I'm with the State Department, and that article is completely wrong. There's no oil in Somalia, and we're not interested." Well, I pointed out, you might want to read the article. It was an article from The Nation, because what it says in there, that Al Haig, who was the Secretary of State for Reagan at the time, went to Somalia and was staying at the Exxon compound in Somalia. So I said, what the fuck would Haig be doing staying at an Exxon compound in Somalia if there wasn't any fucking oil in Somalia and U.S. interest in that oil, you dumb fuck? And I said, not only that, if you read the article, there's 4 compounds in Mogadishu. 4 owned by oil companies, Texaco, BP. I can't remember exactly which ones. I said, what is wrong with you? Either you're lying to me or you're deluded. And you're with the State Department. I don't feel reassured you're being at the State Department that somebody as deluded or as ignorant or as lying as you are, who lacks any ethical base, would be in that position. That does not reassure me as a citizen of the United States. Get the fuck out of my store. So, and that's just one anecdote. Okay, I could give you 1,000. And so this kind of, we talk about These assholes believe Russiagate. They're stupid to do that. And these people believe that Ukraine is virtuous, even though their president and his wife posed for Vogue magazine. Jesus Christ. You can see he's looking for his afterlife in Hollywood. And he doesn't give a rat's rectum. In fact, if you allow me, just my next segue is to how callous Zelensky really is. And I got this from a New Yorker magazine article. A liberal magazine, folks, liberal to the fucking core. And this is just, I'll keep it short. I'll read one paragraph and then just back off. This is from people. These are from some people on the ground, soldiers on the ground, Ukrainian soldiers. Let's see. It begins. Their vehicles were in no better shape than they were. That's the soldiers. One day, a Volkswagen van pulled up with a shattered windshield, no sliding door, and shrapnel gashes across its hood. Luckily, I was driving fast. A 33-year-old soldier named Mikhailo told me. He's driving a beat-up Volkswagen. He spoke flawless English, which makes me a little suspicious, and said that he had fought in the suburbs of Kiev. The combat, well, there really wasn't much fighting in the suburbs of Kiev. So that meant he had a ham sandwich. The combat in Donbass, however, was unique. None of us had seen anything like this. He's in the Donbass, he said. According to Mikhailo, the Ukrainians were so overwhelmingly outgunned that they seldom fired their heavy weapons for fear of betraying their locations. We send 2-3 shells, and they send 70. That's the Russians. You can't move. You just sit in the trench while they shoot. They don't stop. The Russian arsenal has included thermite munitions, which rain down thousands of burning chemical pellets capable of melting steel. That's not a quote. That's the New Yorker interjecting propaganda. And thermobaric weapons, which release a cloud of fuel that a subsequent charge ignites, creating a vacuum of vaporizing heat and pressure. Well, that's up to.
Did they mention that Arnold Schwarzenegger came flying out of the sky on his helicopter in that one somewhere?
What's that?
Did they mention that Arnold Schwarzenegger came down in his helicopter flying out of there on a cable somewhere?
No,
the ghost of Kiev.
The ghost of Kiev, right? I heard a funny anecdote about that on the Alex McCorris and Alexander. I can't remember his.
Oh yeah.
But the
Alex and Alex.
I just got a model of the whatever the Ukrainian pilot's nickname was, the Ghost of Kiev, right? The Ghost of Kiev, and I opened the box and there was nothing in it. But you could see this guy's posing for Vogue while his troops are in those. They go on to talk that they were just conscripted and they had 3 weeks of training, and then they were ordered to the front, and they were not even told what unit to link up with. So they left, and they said now they're worried about being deserters. So here you have idiots. I mean, idiots like what's her name? Well, the Rolling Stones, for example, though they probably had no choice from a public relations point of view to have a Ukrainian choir sing with them at a concert. But what's her name? Oh my God, she's this Patti Smith. Mm-hmm. She's doing a concert for Ukraine. Now I don't know who really gives a rat's rectum about Patti Smith, but I think she might be just one of these virtue signaling assholes that we constantly run into when we kibitz. But let's anyway. The point I'm trying to make:
bleeding heart left.
People are dying for this prick, for this little prick, and the other thieves who are out there selling the Russians the weapons that the West sends them.
Yeah, it's a battle of narratives, and the West has this huge propaganda apparatus. They have this huge advantage with this propaganda apparatus, and they're able to convince the uninformed, uncaring, disenfranchised, busy masses that their narrative is correct, that Russia is evil, Ukraine is the little guy fighting for its sovereignty against this, imperial hegemon.
I
And
think of
that's
a book by John Steinbeck. It's not on the same topic, but it's called "In Dubious Battle," and it comes from a line in John Milton. That phrase always comes to mind when I feel like I'm fighting a lost cause. Like when you come up against these big powers, it's like, what can you really do?
The line from John Milton that reminds me of U.S. foreign policy is
Better to serve in hell than reign in hell.
By force or guile to wage eternal war, and it so sounds like U.S. foreign policy to me. But you know who's saying it? It's Satan. It's Satan.
Yeah. That's what I was. I knew you coming from a line from Satan.
Milton, the great Satan is the United States. But
prophetic.
Anyway.
Well, the narrative, I mean, there's an alternative narrative to the one being spammed, by the propaganda apparatus that is far more compelling and makes a lot more sense and can explain everything so much better. But you try and explain that narrative to these people that, have only heard the one, and they're the ones that think that you're the one that is uninformed and brainwashed.
Well, I mean, in the United States, how many people really want to believe that their own elites are running a shit show somewhere? I mean, they want to somehow identify almost parasitically with those elites.
Yeah, that's indoctrinated. They're temporarily embarrassed billionaires themselves, and so yeah,
well,
right.
I mean, but you go, what do you think happened in Libya? What do you think is happening in Syria? What do you think happened in Iraq? I mean, obviously in Iraq, tens of thousands, millions of people worldwide were in the streets, denouncing the U.S. and build up an invasion of all of that. Did you learn anything from that? What about Vietnam? I go,
right,
fucking break.
How much of these right-wing extremists are coming out of the woodwork because people oppose like the refugees coming in, flooding into their country and things like that because they feel that complete unrest, So how much of that is really the direct result of American imperialism?
Yeah, well, since the 80s, I've been preaching because that was the time of Central America and the Reagan era, and I would tell people, look, these immigrants are coming in because you're destroying their country.
Yeah.
You have death squads trained in Georgia. You have death squads in El Salvador killing people. You're trying to take out the Sandinistas who have nothing in mind except to help their fucking people raise up, and they have done a marvelous job. No matter what you think about it, they have done a great job. The same thing with Honduras. Obviously, you ran a coup in Honduras in 2009 and threw this guy Zelaya out, who wasn't even a fucking radical. I mean, he said, look, we'll do a little land reform. Woo! That sets the rich off. The rich go crazy. They hear that. Not one.
Yeah.
I haven't used those acres in 100 years, but damned if somebody is. That's their fucking philosophy. They don't give a fucking rat's ass about any of this stuff. I'm getting tired of the rectum thing, but it's so yeah. I mean, so they drive these refugees. That's what's happening with Africa. If the fucking U.S. wouldn't put AFRICOM in Africa to run all of these coups and to run all of these Islamic fundamentalist armies, not armies, but militias or whatever you want to call them. They killed the Chad's president. He had guts enough to go into battle against them. If they wouldn't have all of these refugees from North Africa coming in, they wouldn't have all these Eastern European refugees. If when the Soviet bloc broke up, they hadn't destroyed the economies. They were literally turning women who had a chance to under the Eastern Bloc to become engineers and doctors into women who became prostitutes in the West. Jesus Christ. The U.S. is so beyond redemption. Christ could come down and he would go, well, I'm saving the world, but the U.S. Nah, too far gone.
I don't think we're going to change our ways, but I do. The people of the United States, I mean, the general population, I mean, a lot of them are not quite adept at picking through the facts and don't have time or whatever it is. I don't know what it could be. They want to believe what they want to believe. They identify with the nation state, and it's really upsetting, but it's upsetting that our country could go so far down the pits and bring it to itself on its own knees by its own actions, and have us sit back and not know what the hell to do about it.
So Dustin, that brings up an interesting question, and it's kind of what we've been discussing before the show a little bit too. Mm-hmm. Is how big of a net can those of us who oppose the United States and Western imperialism, because I see that there's some real whack jobs that are on my side regarding being against Western imperialism and U.S. That's the best word. Western imperialism. I mean, it's headquartered in the U.S. The U.S. it runs the show with regards to Western imperialism, but they have, the Western Europe is on there, is an ally, Japan, South Korea, Australia. So these are the major pillars of Western imperialism, and the U.S. is the biggest one. But there's people on the right. There's conservatives, there's Republicans, there's people of all kinds that oppose U.S. imperialism, and they see what's going on in Ukraine, and they see it how I see it. Gonzalo Lira, right? He's a conservative. He's a Republican. He's been on the cultural right all his life, but he's a great voice for for opposing and for bringing awareness and even bringing together people. I think today he's having a roundtable with that real popular, good-looking kid on YouTube who's a communist. He's a Marxist-Leninist like myself. Is very popular. I forget his name. His name is escaping me right now. But he's going to be on Gonzalo Lira's roundtable. So and on the sake of yes, Hinkle. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Hinkle's on Gonzalo Lira's roundtable this morning. But the Saker blog is a Christian, conservative, is Orthodox Christian, but it's a conservative, and all of their opinion comes from conservatism, and they're definitely anti-gay agenda. They oppose the LGBTQ. They're in your face about opposing that, and sometimes I cringe. Right? They make me cringe at the homophobic things they say. And but at the same time, they're on my side, and they're telling the truth about Western imperialism in Ukraine. So the question is, how are we to deal with that? How do we deal with these different viewpoints? So to me, I want to educate them, and I want to embrace where we agree, and I want to kind of show them where I think we disagree and that they're going down the wrong path. But if that leads us to contention and division, when what we really need is unity, and it's not easy. It's a struggle. That's why they call it a class struggle. But what are your guys' thoughts about all that?
I think I have it simple. I gotta go. I gotta do this.
Go.
I think it's a natural progression. I don't think there's any conflict there. First of all, I object. I think I'm much more handsome than Hinkle, but
that's fair. That's fair.
I just hide it. But look, it's a natural progression. It's like what I was talking about before we went on air about Blumenthal, Max mm-hmm. Blumenthal, Jimmy Dore, Matt Taibbi, and I can name half a dozen other of these people. Is they think that they can link up with these forces that on the right or domestically with their domestic. This attacking woke people is so punching down. It's so punching down. It shouldn't even be in the purview of any of the people I just mentioned.
It's not like conservatives aren't kind of censoring in their own light as well in certain ways. Like they're doing their own forms of censorship that would be considered woke, you know, to a certain standard. I mean, it seems like it's like there's a hypocrisy there.
But I think what's going to happen is it Blumenthal and oh yeah, and Glenn Greenwald just interviewed Alex Jones, right?
Oh,
that
boy.
stuff. They're going to go along with these folks, and then when the right starts slaughtering African Americans, Native Americans, women that they don't agree with, immigrants, when they start slaughtering them in the streets, Max is going to pull his skirts up and go, "Oh, I made a mistake." You know, he's not, you know, like the guys you're talking about, Hinkle and Lira. They're not going to join in the slaughter. They're above that part of the fray, but they're so fucking naive. I can't believe these fucking kids in their 40s and 50s. Some of them are so stupid to go along. I mean, it's like the British Chancellor all over again, and Hitler or early Churchill. Oh, Hitler's so wonderful. You know, it's like that again. I can smell it. I can smell the stink coming off of Alex Jones' filthy ass, his stinking ass. Every time I see Bannon, I see death walking, and those are the front men. You don't want to know about.
I think the best option for the right wingers that we're talking about, just slip them an Iron Maiden album or two and let them have some fun with it. We're gonna take a brief break, but we'll be back with the same topic, and we'll keep Carlo on heat. And
I got something else I want to add.
Do you know that there is a publishing company that wants to make life easier for you as a writer? This publishing company is called World Inkers Printing and Publishing. We publish in all different languages, and we're looking for writers of all genres, all formats. We're looking for scholars, ghostwriters, playwrights, poets, short fiction, novelists, you name it. We're looking for anybody who is interested in writing and the craft of writing to be in touch with us. You can reach us at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. With World Inkers Printing and Publishing, you do not require a lot of money to publish with us. Contact us today at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. Become a winner with other authors at World Inkers Printing and Publishing. Give us a shot. We will surely finish you.
In a world where the quality of information available to poorer communities is doctored, tainted, and sometimes regressive, where the words fake news have come to mean other people's opinions, it is vital to rely on news platforms with journalists who have feet on the ground and can report the truth. New York Parrot, a New York-based national and global news outlet, is changing the narratives of media operations. We focus on the news that matters, like self-empowerment, entrepreneurship, finances, health, security, politics, and more. We strive to curb violence, racial and economic discrimination, and to promote peace and socio-economic development of multiculturally diverse world. As we give voice to the people, we also give your business a voice and make it heard. Get your product and services off the ground by advertising on our fast-growing platform. With so much of daily visits to New York Parrot, you can't afford to be invisible to prospective clients on the website they trust the most. Our posts reach millions of people across the New York State and around the world. Advertising on our new site will unlock an audience of thousands of potential customers on your doorstep. New York Parrot is born to prosperously speak tomorrow for the voiceless.
New York Parrot TV, excellent platform. And if you guys are out there watching right now, you can leave us some comments on our YouTube and subscribe to our channel. So, Carlo, what were you wanting to say before the break?
Well, I wanted to say I've kind of lost my train of thought, but there was a report in the Post today about a third party some people wanting to form a third party. The only person I remember is I can't remember his name. He's a Democratic candidate for president. Has a Chinese American name, Wang.
Yang.
Yang, that's right.
Oh yes.
I noticed that Wang Ping just showed up in the advertisement. I got confused. Anyway, the point I want to make is there's hundreds of millions of dollars behind this kind of right wing white supremacist move, and if anything, Jimmy Dore, for example, he says he's ignoring January 6th because it's just a ploy by the Democrats to keep Trump from being able to run in the next election and all that. Sure it is. That's politics. I've seen that shit all my life. You know, you got Lenny behind me. I got a quote attached to it. I had him up in my store. It says, "They're so corrupt, it's thrilling." That quote is when in 1961, the election was stolen from Richard Nixon by John Kennedy because of Richard Daley's Democratic machine. Everybody knows that Chicago did not go that far Democrat. It's common knowledge. Nixon probably, if he wouldn't have won, it would have been as close. It was already a very close race. It would have been even closer. So that kind of politics, I've seen that all my fucking life. Okay. But the thing about January 6th was, if the timing had been different, if Hawley hadn't hauled ass as quickly as he did out of the building, well, they probably wouldn't have known who he was, because the people storming the building didn't know who he was, and because he was wearing a 3-piece suit, they probably would have beat him severely, if not killed him. If the timing had been slightly different, if Pelosi or AOC or somebody had been cornered, they would have been severely beaten, if not killed. Pence, same thing. I understand why he didn't want to get into the limousine with all those Italian American Secret Service guys, because they were working for Trump. Trump got to choose his leaders of that staff of the Secret Service, and they're all a bunch of Italian hoods. So basically from New York. So what you're talking about is, if Pence had gotten into that limousine, the best thing that would have happened to him is he would have been kidnapped. He would have gotten a talking to. We're gonna try to talk some sense into you here. So it could have gone a lot worse. And I don't say this with any kind of wish, but if it had gone worse, then we wouldn't be in this position where the next leap is going to be catastrophic, but by comparison. After the congressional elections this fall, things are going to start happening that the Max Blumenthals and the Jimmy Dores and the other sissies have never thought of possibly happening when they sat down with the Tucker Carlsons and the Alex Jones, or didn't admonish the Steve Bannons or ignored the January 6th election.
I have a question for both of you. Do you see that if the Democrats currently are they just inept, or are they actually really accomplishing things that were not really being discussed openly as much?
Great
do you
question.
think they're doing a good job or not? I mean, are they carrying the economy forward after COVID? Is COVID still an issue? I mean, what are we looking at right now? We're seeing high rates of inflation, phenomenal rates of inflation. We're seeing gas prices steadily increasing. A lot of things that are like problems, but could it be worse if it wasn't for the Democrats, or is the Democrats the cause? What do you think?
Well, can I try and take that one, and I'm going to do it in a roundabout way. I'm going to try and address some of the differences I have with Carlo. So, Carlo, I mean, you're like kind of prophesying in a way. You're saying what would have happened January 6th, what will happen when the midterms happen and the Republicans get in, and I'm not sure I agree with your assumptions. I look at, I see a conscious effort by the ruling establishment to push a certain agenda. When the CIA has commercials talking about, promoting LGBTQ. Like, I don't have a problem with that, but it's obvious that it's something that's being pushed and promoted by the elites, by the ruling class. Now, there is a division within the ruling class, which we talked about, and there's a minority that is trying to capitalize off of, a popular bias against having this thing pushed down their throats, right? And so you have the minority within the ruling class establishment, trying to win political points by opposing this thing that the majority is obviously shoving down everybody's throat. So that's a dynamic that I don't see being appreciated in your analysis. And that's why I don't see the midterms, and if the Republicans do well in the midterms, I just don't see a Hitler-style anti-Jewish pogroms coming. Like, nobody is for that. And I also am very suspicious about these groups. There's the Tiki Torch guys, Jews will not replace us. Like, I'm suspicious. Like, I'm thinking those guys are put up to that. They're put up to that to discredit this minority thing. Like, of course, there's real racists out there, but they're an extreme minority, in my opinion. And there was something else, but
I don't know if they're fake. They're fake, racist.
Oh, I remember the last point I wanted to say about January 6th, and I'm just going to speak very vaguely because I don't have the specifics in my mind, but one of the primary guys on the ground January 6th inciting people to storm the Capitol, inciting people to violence, was one of the major ones, was never prosecuted. And again, the thinking with me, I mean, I don't know for sure, but my suspicion is that he was working for the Fed, that you have these provocateurs that are deliberately trying to get these people to do things to discredit them. Like, that's a real thing. Carlo, that's a real thing. The FBI does that. That these agent provocateurs will infiltrate these groups and try and incite them to discredit the anti-war movement, to discredit the anti-racist movement, to discredit any group that they consider a threat. So we need to our analysis needs to be open to these possibilities, and it paints a picture a little bit different than the one that you were presenting a few minutes ago. But I'll leave it there.
But there definitely been FBI informants involved in, like, the Proud Boys and stuff like that. I mean, one of the major
the Black Panthers
salons and everywhere. Yeah,
look at the difference. You're just talking about one group of racists joining another group of racists. Look, if those fuckers at the Capitol had been black, there would be 400 dead black people.
Right.
That's true.
Dead black people.
That's true.
They would have been gunned down. So
no argument with.
You got two.
I agree. Yeah.
What are you going to do when they focus on killing immigrants and black people? The fucking people who are on supposedly defending the Capitol, many of them will begin killing. That's why the people got so far in the Capitol. They're racist too. They're racist there too. It's a racist country. Listen, you want to talk about LGBTQ? You know why the CIA and the military and they're putting out all these fucking bogus? Because during the Iraq War, they dismissed all of these people in the military that were in defense intelligence. I think it was 70 some people because they were gay and they didn't want to jeopardize national security. Well, among those 70 people were every fucking Farsi speaker in the fucking military. So they started losing people on the ground, the U.S. soldiers on the ground, because there was no one who could intercept the fucking Iraqi Sunni backlash to inform these people about what's going to happen on the ground, because they fired all the Sunnis, all the Farsi speakers that were in the military. That's why, because those are the fucking intelligent people. They're not the cretins that are going to be the foot soldiers for the scapes. and the Teals and the Kochs. The Koch brothers for 30 years now have been putting people in city councils, into state legislatures, into school boards, and all that. This is what this 30 party says they want to do. And the people they've been putting in there, if you look to them, they have associations with every fascist element in the country. They're just fascist. They're right-wing, white supremacists without any compunction about being such. I mean, they'll come up with excuses, but and they're winning elections because it appeals to the white people that still hold majorities in those places, mostly in the Midwest. So and the far west, but not all the way to the West Coast. So in place you have this already white supremacist underpinning. These are the people like DeSantis. Oh man, he's Hitler to Trump's Mussolini. He's Hitler to Trump's Mussolini. Here's a guy we don't want people telling our people what to do. They don't have to wear masks. Oh yeah, but now we have textbooks. We have to take out all the evil stuff we did to African Americans for the last 400 years because we don't want our children to be learning critical race theory, which they're not. They're just learning fucking history. Anybody knows it actually happened.
They know what critical race theory is.
That's Hitler shit, baby. That's Hitler shit. That's what Hitler did. Ah, Jesus. It's just staring everybody in the face.
Well, I mean, Hitler rounded up all the Jews and he killed millions of them. So, I mean, I don't see Trump advocating that. I don't see anybody advocating that. Everybody denounces that, except for a very few fringe, very, very few, very, very fringe people say that either that's not true or that's what he did.
We've had concentration camps in this country with
you can't mention Trump in that
Japanese
thing. We had our little friend Haas, whatever his name was, Hayes or whatever, and Trump is imperialism. I'll tell you something about Trump. When John Bolton went into Trump's office and said, Venezuela has oil, Trump went, Venezuela has oil? Really? Oh, he didn't know it. They have to invade. He wanted to invade because he saw money coming his way via oil. So he would do it. He increased drone strikes because he didn't have to look at the blood. I mean, he's a sissy. Trump is a big, fat, little pussy. You could go up to Trump and you could slap him in the face and punch him in the face, and he wouldn't be able to defend himself. He'd have to call his security people over because he's a little coward. He's a little piece of shit. But when he hears money, he'll do anything for money. So Trump is like he's a pathological creature of another order. DeSantis is a stone cold murderer. He likes to kill. I don't think he'd be the foreign policy guru that Haas thinks Trump is, out of the fact that Haas doesn't seem to know his ass from a hole in the ground. Well, he had a little bit of knowledge. He had a little bit of knowledge about what was happening in Ukraine. And of course, who was he debating in that debate I'm talking about? Richard Spencer, a neo-Nazi. Now we're going to get kicked off. A neo-Nazi, fascist white supremacist who's getting tens of thousands, if not millions of dollars from the Teals and the Kochs and the Scapes.
And he's the one that went on this really horrendous rant after Charlottesville that was recorded by Yiannopoulos. That, God, I listened to it. It was horrendous. I mean, again,
no, he is one of the actual outspoken.
CNN gives him a platform sometimes too,
but not to promote him, just to denounce him and to show, hey, look, real Nazis do exist. Real white supremacists do exist. So he's definitely fringe. I mean, to suggest that Richard Spencer is mainstream when he's denounced by, both the red and the blue parties. But I mean, again,
but let me say one
Go
thing
ahead.
about Spencer. He didn't know anything about Ukraine, so he was virtue signaling. He was using every virtue signal I get from my friends that don't know anything about Ukraine. I just want to.
He supported Sanders for a while too, at least on Twitter, nominally on Twitter. He made a few positive posts about Bernie Sanders some years ago.
Fringe elements tend to oppose, the establishment. So, and that's the question for us. The question for us as, with our principles and our anti-imperialism, where do we draw the line when we unite with other people against imperialism? I definitely draw the line long before Spencer, but I mean, I'm not going to draw it that excludes Max Blumenthal, and I think that's one of the differences here, maybe that we have. But again, it's a class struggle. We need to unify, but the question of who do we unify with brings division. So there's so many things that bring division within, in the class struggle, and it's very contentious who we can work with and who we can't. That itself is a contentious issue that keeps us divided. It's just one of those things we got to get past.
Well,
we can keep each other in line, I guess. I mean, I don't know how much we can actually oppose the imperialism. It's sort of imploding on itself as we speak.
And people ask why aren't the Democrats doing anything? Well, listen, the Democrats, they have their 1,100 bases worldwide. They have their $800 billion a year military budget. That's they're perfectly happy to dwell in that thing and let a bunch of fascist neo-Nazis take over domestic policy in this country. They don't care. Why would they really care? I mean, I have a theory about Manchin. I think Manchin has been set up. He's been informed by Pelosi and Schumer to vote against everything that the Democrats come up with, and we'll see if he passes this latest really watered down collection of bills.
So Glenn, yeah,
I think he's a shill.
Glenn Greenwald kind of described how the Democrats operate. He labeled it villain rotation. So the Democrats on paper are always able to support every progressive policy until that policy has a possibility of becoming reality. Once it has a possibility of becoming reality, they assign a particular Democrat to veto it, and then they say, oh, it's just one of those, it's just democracy, that's just how things work. So it's a game that they've played over and over, and Greenwald, it was a 2012 article for Salon, kind of documented how time and again that happens. So no, again, I see it as a one-party capitalist dictatorship. They divide themselves into two colors, red and blue, and they always switch policies. Like blue policies today are not what blue policies were in the 70s or 60s. They always switch policies, and it's orchestrated by a class
open about it too,
in order to maintain their political hegemony and make sure that the status quo remains. And so to think of it as a democracy, to think of it as two warring political parties that are really principle driven is just nonsense. They don't have principles other than to maintain capitalist class hegemony and the status quo and maintain their imperialism. But Nancy Pelosi's going to Taiwan, maybe not. I think that's going to be a big mistake. I'm not sure. There's a division within the ruling class establishment. The division is, do we want to provoke China and open the gates to a possible war that we can't really control, or maybe now isn't the best time to do something so provocative, especially after China has warned. So you have two competing opinions within the ruling class establishment, and I don't know who's going to win out. I would totally understand if Pelosi doesn't go, because they don't need another huge provocation against China right now. They got their hands full with the freaking global economic crisis and Ukraine and Russia. They don't need to open up another Pandora's box with China. But on the other hand, you've got these crazy, rabid imperialists that just want total conflict because they're going to be fine because they're rich rich motherfuckers, but and they see conflict as in their interest, and especially the arms manufacturers. So there's a huge segment of the ruling class establishment that just wants more provocations, more aggression, and so they're going to be pushing for Pelosi to do whatever she can. So it's a tug of war, and I don't know how it's going to end up.
Yeah, my question is
4 minutes.
The only thing we get is that the people that are promoting this sort of conflict with obviously in Ukraine and now possibly with China and Taiwan is there something behind the lunacy? And no one seems to have. I mean, I hear everybody from Wakoris to Greenwald to everybody just calling U.S. foreign policy just crazy, loony, out of touch. But I don't really know what it is, and I'd like somebody beyond that. I'd like somebody to like find some other motivation behind it. Any
Well, I mean, I think the motivation is if they don't do anything, if there's not a big, global confrontation, if the status quo remains, the U.S. is declining. They're being displaced. Mm-hmm. China is going to take their lunch the fair way through trade, through development, through peace, through mutual prosperity. They're going to be, and that's obvious. And so that's why they have to do something. That's why we see the Ukraine thing. That's why they cut off Nord Stream 2. I mean, so that's what's going on. But, are they going to they're just going to increase the speed of that decline by I think Ukraine increased the speed of that decline. I think the decline is inevitable, and they're hoping to forestall it, but the things they're doing to forestall it are going to make it happen faster, and that's what we're seeing.
All right. Well, that's pretty much the what I'm hearing from people.
Yeah.
And I certainly have no insights.
I think that's I don't know. I mean, absurdity and life in motion.
Well, I can tell you a little bit about West Virginia. I bet neither of you have ever been to West Virginia.
I've been to Virginia. I don't think I've been to West Virginia.
I think I have been to West Virginia.
Oh, you have? Yeah.
Sure, I think so. I've been to part of the West Virginia.
It's really mountainous. Very third world. People living in trailer parks.
Yeah.
Very impoverished, very run down. That's Mansion State. Yet, and it's funny because when we were talking with Regis, he wanted to know how much abuse the American public could take, given the inflation.
And is that frustration part of what led to the insurrection and part of that?
No, it's racism. Don't listen to Jimmy
pure racism.
Ford. I mean, it's racism, pure and simple. It's don't tread on white people things. It's racism, pure Hitlerian racism. Go ahead, deplatform us.
We can't say you know what, but we can say some things.
Yeah.
Well, we have about a minute and a half, so I'm going to go ahead and close our show today. But this has been a really fun discussion, and hopefully we won't be booted off. You've been watching the Foreign Policy Review. Remember to keep in track of New York Parrot's programming, and you can advertise with New York Parrot if you dare. And take a look at the ad at the end of the show. And thanks for watching. Remember, you can subscribe to our channel and leave some comments while we're interrogating each other and driving ourselves insane with questions. Thanks a lot for watching today. Thanks, Carlo and Billy Bob. And we'll have a nice next Thursday, same time, 11 a.m. Central Standard Time, noon on Eastern Standard Time. Have a good day, everybody. Get some research doing. Go out there and do some reading.
In a world where the quality of information available to poorer communities is doctored, tainted, and sometimes regressive, where the words fake news have come to mean other people's opinions, it is vital to rely on news platforms with journalists who have feet on the ground and can report the truth. New York Parrot, a New York-based national and global news outlet, is changing the narratives of media operations. We focus on the news that matters, like self-empowerment, entrepreneurship, finances, health, security, politics, and more. We strive to curb violence, racial and economic discrimination, and to promote peace and socio-economic development of multiculturally diverse world. As we give voice to the people, we also give your business a voice and make it heard. Get your products and services off the ground by advertising on our fast-growing platform. With so much of daily visits to New York Parrot, you can't afford to be invisible to prospective clients on the website they trust the most. Our posts reach millions of people across the New York State and around the world. Advertising on our new site will unlock an audience of thousands of potential customers on your doorstep. New York Parrot is born to prosperously speak tomorrow for the voice.